Marcus Thompson woke up that Saturday morning to the smell of freshly brewed coffee, a scent that didn't belong in his small, modest apartment. His eyes blinked open slowly, adjusting to the soft morning light filtering through the worn curtains. For a moment, he lay still, his mind foggy with sleep, trying to place the unfamiliar aroma. Then he heard it. The quiet clinking of a mug against the kitchen counter, followed by the soft rustle of fabric. His heart stopped. Someone was in his home. Marcus bolted upright, his pulse hammering in his chest. His daughter Lily was still asleep in her room. He could hear her soft breathing through the thin walls. Panic surged through him as he swung his legs out of bed, his bare feet hitting the cold floor. He grabbed the baseball bat he kept beside his nightstand, a relic from his high school days, and moved toward the door with the silent precision of a man who had learned to protect what little he had. But nothing could have prepared him for what he saw when he stepped into the living room. There she was. Standing in his kitchen, framed by the morning light, was Victoria Chen, the CEO of Chen Enterprises, one of the most powerful women in the city. She was wearing his shirt, his faded, oversized Yale University shirt that he hadn't worn in years, the one he kept buried at the bottom of his drawer like a memory he couldn't quite let go of. It hung loose on her frame, falling just above her knees, and her long dark hair cascaded over her shoulders in soft waves. She held a steaming mug of coffee in her hands, her expression unreadable as she stared out the small window above his sink. Marcus froze. The baseball bat slipped from his fingers, clattering against the floor with a dull thud that echoed through the silent apartment. Victoria turned at the sound, her dark eyes meeting his, and for a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. "Marcus," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. He couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but stand there staring at the woman he thought he'd never see again, the woman who had disappeared from his life 13 years ago, without a trace, without an explanation, without a goodbye. The woman who had taken his heart with her and left him with nothing but questions and a void that no amount of time could fill. What are you doing here?" His voice came out hoarse, barely above a whisper. Victoria set the mug down carefully on the counter, her movements deliberate and measured. She took a step toward him, and he instinctively took a step back. The look in her eyes, God, that look. It was a mixture of pain, regret, and something else he couldn't quite name, something that made his chest tighten and his throat constrict. "I needed to see you," she said, her voice trembling ever so slightly. "I needed to tell you the truth." The truth. The word hung in the air between them like a guillotine blade, poised to drop and sever whatever fragile understanding he had of his own life. Marcus felt his knees weaken, and he reached out to steady himself against the doorframe. His mind raced, flipping through memories like pages in a book he thought he'd closed forever. Yale, late nights in the library, her laughter, the way she'd looked at him like he was the only person in the world who mattered. And then, nothing. One day she was there and the next she was gone. No calls, no messages, just an empty dorm room and a heart that never quite healed. "The truth," he echoed, his voice rising with a mix of anger and desperation. "You disappeared 13 years ago, Victoria. 13 years. No explanation, no closure, just gone. And now you show up in my apartment wearing my shirt, talking about truth. What truth could possibly justify? Lily is mine." The words hit him like a freight train. Marcus staggered backward, his back slamming against the wall. His vision blurred, and for a moment he thought he might collapse right there on his living room floor. Lily, his daughter, his entire world. The little girl with the bright eyes and infectious laugh, who had been the only light in his darkness for the past 12 years. "No," he whispered, shaking his head. "No, that's not. Sarah was her mother. Sarah and I—" "Sarah lied to you, Marcus." Victoria's voice cracked and tears began to stream down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. But Lily is my daughter, our daughter." The room spun. Marcus slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor, his head in his hands. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of nightmare, some cruel trick his mind was playing on him. Sarah, his ex-girlfriend, the woman he'd tried to build a life with after Victoria left, had told him Lily was his. And he'd believed her. He'd raised that little girl, loved her with every fibre of his being, become a father in every sense of the word. And now Victoria was telling him. How? The question came out as a choked sob. How is that even possible? Victoria moved toward him slowly, sinking to her knees in front of him. She reached out, her hand hovering near his face before she pulled it back, as if she didn't have the right to touch him anymore. Before I left, she began, her voice barely audible, I found out I was pregnant. I was terrified, Marcus. We were so young, and my family, they had plans for me. Big plans, taking over the company, marrying someone they approved of, having a baby with a scholarship student from a modest background. It would have ruined everything they'd worked for. Marcus looked up at her, his eyes red and burning. So you just left? You abandoned our child? You abandoned me? I thought I was doing the right thing. Victoria's voice broke and she covered her face with her hands. I was 20 years old and scared out of my mind. My parents found out and they made me give the baby up. They told me it was for the best, that the child would go to a good family, that I could move on with my life, but I couldn't, Marcus. I couldn't move on. I've spent every single day of the past 13 years regretting that decision, searching for her, trying to find a way to make things right. And Sarah, Marcus demanded, his voice shaking with rage and heartbreak. How does Sarah fit into all of this? Victoria wiped her tears with the back of her hand, her expression tortured. Sarah worked for my family's company. She was a low-level assistant, but she knew about the adoption. Somehow she tracked you down, found out you were alone and struggling after I left. She saw an opportunity. She approached you, started a relationship with you, and when the time was right, she told you Lily was yours. She'd arranged to adopt Lily through a private agency, an agency my parents had used. She knew you'd never question it because you wanted so badly to believe that some part of what we had still existed. The revelation was too much. Marcus felt like he was drowning, like the walls of his small apartment were closing in on him. Every memory he had of the past 12 years was now tainted, twisted, revealed to be built on a foundation of lies. Sarah's sudden departure 3 years ago, leaving him alone with Lily. It all made a sick kind of sense now. She'd gotten what she wanted, a connection to the Chen family, leverage perhaps. And when she was done playing house, she'd simply walked away. I need you to leave, Marcus said quietly, his voice hollow. Marcus, please, leave. The word exploded from him, echoing through the apartment. I can't process this right now. Our daughter, is asleep in the next room, and I don't even know what to tell her. I don't know what to tell myself. Just, please, go. Victoria stood slowly, her movements heavy with grief. She walked toward the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, she said softly, not turning around. But I'm not leaving Lily's life again. I'll give you time. But we need to talk about this. We need to figure out what's best for her. She deserves to know the truth. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and Marcus was left alone in the silence of his apartment, his world shattered into a million pieces he didn't know how to put back together. In the distance, he heard Lily's small voice calling out, Daddy, are you okay? He wiped his eyes quickly and forced a smile he didn't feel. Yeah, baby, he called back, his voice cracking. Daddy's fine. I'll be right there. But as he sat there on the floor of his living room, surrounded by the remnants of a life built on lies, Marcus knew nothing would ever be fine again. The days that followed Victoria's revelation moved like molasses, thick, suffocating, impossible to escape. Marcus went through the motions of his life like a ghost haunting his own existence. He made breakfast for Lily, walked her to school, went to his job at the community center where he coached youth basketball, came home, helped with homework, tucked her into bed. But every smile he forced, every reassuring word he spoke, felt like a betrayal of the turmoil raging inside him. How do you tell a 12-year-old girl that everything she knows about her life is a lie? How do you explain that the woman who raised her for the first 3 years of her life wasn't her mother, and that her real mother, a woman she's never met, is one of the most powerful people in the city? How do you do that without destroying the fragile sense of security that's the only thing keeping her world from falling apart? Marcus couldn't answer those questions, so he said nothing. He held his silence like a shield, protecting Lily from a truth he didn't know how to deliver. But Victoria wasn't silent. 3 days after their confrontation, a black town car pulled up outside the community center, just as Marcus was locking up for the evening. He knew who it was before the driver even stepped out to open the rear door. His hands trembled as he shoved his keys into his pocket, his jaw clenched tight. He'd been expecting this, dreading it, knowing that Victoria Chen wasn't the type of woman who simply walked away when she wanted something. And she wanted Lily. Victoria emerged from the car wearing a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than Marcus made in 3 months. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek bun, her makeup flawless, every inch of her the powerful CEO the world knew her to be. But when her eyes met his across the empty parking lot, he saw something else, something raw and vulnerable that reminded him of the 20-year-old girl he'd fallen in love with all those years ago. "We need to talk," she said as she approached, her heels clicking against the asphalt. "There's nothing to talk about," Marcus replied, his voice cold. He started walking toward his beat-up Honda Civic, but Victoria stepped into his path. "Marcus, please. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." 5 minutes? He laughed bitterly. "You think 5 minutes is going to make up for 13 years of lies? 5 minutes is going to explain why you let me raise our daughter thinking she belonged to someone else? 5 minutes is going to fix the fact that my entire life has been built on a foundation of deception?" Victoria flinched at his words, but she didn't back down. "No," she said quietly, 5 minutes won't fix any of that, nothing will. But I need to tell you why I'm here, what I'm planning to do, and give you a chance to be part of the decision instead of having it forced on you." Something in her tone made him pause. There was a weight to her words, a finality that sent a chill down his spine. "What are you planning?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "I've hired a lawyer," Victoria said, and Marcus felt the ground shift beneath his feet. "I want joint custody of Lily. I want to be part of her life, a real part, not just some distant figure who shows up on holidays. I want her to know who I am, where she comes from, and yes, I want to give her opportunities that you—" She trailed off, and Marcus saw her struggle with the words. "That you might not be able to provide on your own." The implication hung in the air like poison. Money, resources. The kind of life that came with the Chen family name. Private schools, international travel, connections that could open any door. Everything Marcus couldn't give his daughter, no matter how hard he worked, no matter how many extra shifts he picked up, no matter how much he loved her. "You're taking her from me," he said, his voice breaking. "That's what this is. You're going to use your money and your lawyers and your influence to take my daughter away from me." "No!" Victoria stepped closer, her composure cracking. "God, no, Marcus, that's not what I want. I don't want to take her from you. You're her father. You're the one who's been there, who's raised her, who's loved her. I could never replace that, and I don't want to. But I am her mother, biologically and legally, and I have rights too. I've spent 13 years living with this emptiness, this hole in my heart where my daughter should be. I can't do it anymore. I won't." Marcus turned away from her, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to fight, to hire his own lawyer, to do whatever it took to keep Lily safe in the only home she'd ever really known. But another part of him, a quieter, more rational part, understood that Victoria was right. She was Lily's biological mother. She had legal standing, and if this went to court, her resources would crush him like an insect. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice hollow. "I want us to tell her together," Victoria said. "I want us to sit down with Lily and explain the truth, all of it, in a way that doesn't make her feel like her world is ending. I want us to work together to figure out a custody arrangement that works for everyone, and I want—" She paused, her voice softening. "I want a chance to know my daughter, to be the mother I should have been 13 years ago." Marcus closed his eyes, feeling tears burn behind his lids. "She's going to hate me," he whispered. "When she finds out I knew Sarah wasn't her real mother, when she realizes I've been lying to her." "You didn't know," Victoria said firmly. "Sarah lied to you too, Marcus. You're just as much a victim in this as anyone. And Lily needs to understand that. She needs to know that everything you did because you loved her." The word victim stung. Marcus Thompson had never thought of himself as a victim. He'd always been a survivor, a fighter, a man who took life's punches and kept moving forward. But standing there in that empty parking lot, facing a truth he couldn't deny and a future he couldn't control, he felt more powerless than he ever had in his life. "When?" he asked finally. "This weekend," Victoria replied. "Saturday afternoon. We'll sit down together, just the three of us, and we'll tell her everything. And then we'll answer her questions, and we'll help her process it, and we'll move forward, together." Marcus nodded slowly, unable to speak around the lump in his throat. Victoria reached out and placed a hand on his arm, a gentle touch that carried the weight of their shared history and uncertain future. "I know you don't believe me," she said softly, "but I never stopped loving you, Marcus, and I never stopped regretting the choice I made 13 years ago. I can't change the past, but I can try to make the future better, for all of us." She walked back to her car, leaving Marcus alone in the gathering darkness. He stood there for a long time, staring up at the stars beginning to appear in the evening sky, wondering how he was going to survive what came next. When he finally got home, Lily was waiting for him at the kitchen table, her math homework spread out in front of her. She looked up with that bright, trusting smile that had been his anchor for the past 12 years, and he felt his heart shatter all over again. "Hey, Daddy, I'm stuck on number 14. Can you help me?" Marcus crossed the room and wrapped his arms around her, hugging her so tight she squeaked in protest. "Always, baby girl," he murmured into her hair. "Always." But as he sat down beside her and looked at the math problem through blurry eyes, one question consumed his thoughts. How many more times would she call him Daddy before everything changed forever? Listen, I know sharing these deeply personal stories isn't easy, but if you've ever felt the weight of hidden truths, the pain of love lost, or the fear of losing what matters most, then you understand why these stories need to be told. Subscribe to this channel and join us on this journey. Your like helps spread empathy to others who need it, and your comment, maybe sharing your own story of unexpected revelations or family secrets, could touch another soul who's walking this same difficult path. We're all connected by these human experiences, and together we can find strength in our shared struggles. Saturday arrived like an executioner's blade, swift, inevitable, merciless. Marcus had barely slept the night before, lying awake in his bed and rehearsing 1,000 different ways to tell Lily the truth. None of them felt right. None of them would soften the blow of what was coming. By the time dawn broke through his window, he'd given up on finding the perfect words and resigned himself to simply speaking from the heart. Victoria arrived at exactly 2 o'clock, punctual as always. Marcus watched from the window as she stepped out of her car. No driver this time, he noticed. She was alone, dressed casually in jeans and a soft cream sweater, her hair falling loose around her shoulders. She looked younger this way, more vulnerable, more like the girl he'd once known. In her hands, she carried a small gift bag, and the sight of it made his stomach clench. She was bringing presents, of course she was. What do you bring when you meet your daughter for the first time in 13 years? What gift could possibly bridge that canyon of lost time? Marcus opened the door before she could knock. They stood there for a moment, two people who had once shared everything, now separated by an ocean of pain and regret. "She's in her room," he said quietly. "I told her we had something important to talk about, but I didn't give her any details. She's nervous." "So am I," Victoria admitted, and he could hear the tremor in her voice. "Marcus, let's just do this," he interrupted, unable to bear another moment of prolonged agony. He led her inside, through the small living room that suddenly felt even more cramped and shabby, with Victoria's presence filling it. Every worn piece of furniture, every scuffed wall, every sign of their modest life screamed the differences between his world and hers. "Lily," he called out, "can you come out here, please?" The door to Lily's room opened, and she emerged wearing her favorite purple hoodie and leggings, her long dark hair, so much like Victoria's, pulled into a ponytail. Her eyes immediately found the stranger in their living room, and Marcus saw the confusion flicker across her face, followed quickly by curiosity. "Lily, this is—" Marcus's voice caught. How did he introduce the woman who had given birth to his daughter? "This is Victoria Chen. She's—" "We need to talk to you about something very important." Lily moved closer to Marcus instinctively, her 12-year-old intuition sensing that whatever was coming would change things. "Okay," she said slowly, drawing out the word. "Is something wrong? Are you sick, Dad?" The concern in her voice nearly broke him. Even now, facing the unknown, her first thought was for him. "No, baby, I'm not sick, but this is going to be hard to hear, and I need you to know before we start that I love you more than anything in this world. That will never, ever change. Do you understand?" Lily nodded, her eyes wide now, flickering between Marcus and Victoria with growing apprehension. They all sat down, Marcus and Lily on the couch, Victoria in the armchair across from them, and for a moment nobody spoke. The silence was deafening, broken only by the ticking of the cheap clock on the wall. Victoria was the one who finally spoke. "Lily," she began, her voice soft but steady, "I don't know how to say this in a way that won't hurt, so I'm just going to tell you the truth. 12 years ago, I gave birth to a baby girl. I was very young, and I was scared, and my family convinced me that I couldn't keep her. So I gave her up for adoption." She paused, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "That baby was you, Lily. I'm your biological mother." The words hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. Lily sat frozen, her face completely blank as her mind struggled to process what she'd just heard. Marcus reached for her hand, but she pulled away, standing up abruptly and backing toward the wall. "No," she said, shaking her head. "No, that's not—" "Sarah was my mom. You told me Sarah was my mom. You said she left when I was little, but that she was my mom. You said—" "Sarah lied to both of us," Marcus said, his voice cracking. "I didn't know, Lily. I swear to God I didn't know. Sarah told me you were mine, ours, and I believed her because I wanted so badly for it to be true. But Victoria is telling you the truth. She is your biological mother, and I—" He faltered, struggling with the next words. "And I'm not your biological father." The sound Lily made was somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Her face crumpled, and she slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, her arms wrapped around her knees. "So everything was a lie," she whispered. "My whole life. Everything I thought I knew about where I came from." Victoria moved to kneel in front of her, but Lily flinched away. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice sharp with pain. "You don't get to touch me. You gave me away. You didn't want me." "That's not true." Victoria's composure shattered, tears streaming down her face. "I wanted you so much, Lily. I was just 20 years old and terrified, and I made the worst decision of my entire life. I've regretted it every single day since. I've thought about you constantly, wondered where you were, what you looked like, if you were happy. And when I finally found you, when I discovered that you were here with Marcus, I knew I had to make things right." "Make things right?" Lily laughed bitterly, a sound too old for her young voice. "How are you going to make this right? You can't just show up after 12 years and expect me to—" "What? Call you Mom? Pretend like we have some kind of relationship? I don't even know you." "I know," Victoria said softly, "and I'm not asking you to call me Mom or to have a relationship you're not ready for. I'm just asking for a chance to get to know you, to be part of your life if you'll let me." Lily turned to Marcus, her eyes red and accusatory. "Did you know?" she demanded. "Before she showed up, did you know any of this?" "No," Marcus said firmly, moving to sit on the floor beside her despite her earlier rejection. "I had no idea, baby girl. Sarah deceived both of us. But here's what I do know, and what hasn't changed. I've been your dad for 12 years. I've bandaged your scraped knees, stayed up with you when you had nightmares, taught you to ride a bike, helped you with homework, cheered at every basketball game. Biology doesn't change any of that. You are my daughter in every way that matters." "But not really," Lily said, her voice small and broken. "Not biologically, so what does that make you? What does that make us?" The question pierced Marcus's heart like a spear. "It makes me the man who's loved you from the moment I held you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "It makes me the person who would do anything for you, who has built his entire life around making sure you're safe and happy and loved. DNA doesn't define family, Lily. Love does. And I have loved you with every breath I've taken for the past 12 years. Lily was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face as she processed the magnitude of what she'd learned. Victoria sat back, giving them space, her own tears flowing freely. The three of them remained there on the floor of that small living room, bound together by truth and lies, biology and choice, love and loss. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, Lily spoke. "I need time," she said quietly. "I need time to think about all of this. I can't process this right now." "Of course," Victoria said immediately. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here whenever you're ready to talk or ask questions or even just be angry. You have every right to be angry." Lily looked at the gift bag Victoria had brought, still sitting untouched on the coffee table. "What's in there?" she asked. Victoria picked it up with trembling hands and held it out. "It's a photo album," she said. "Pictures of me when I was your age, when I was in college, when I was pregnant with you. And some things I saved from when you were born. Your hospital bracelet, a blanket, a few other items. I thought maybe you'd want to see them, to know where you came from, even if you're not ready to know me yet." Lily took the bag slowly, holding it like it might explode. She looked at Marcus, seeking his permission or approval or reassurance. He wasn't sure which. He nodded, giving her what he hoped was an encouraging smile, despite the pain tearing through his chest. "Okay," Lily said finally. "Okay, but I need you to leave now. Both of you. Victoria, I need you to leave. I need to be alone. I need to think." Victoria stood, nodding quickly. Of course, I'll go. But Lily, before I do, I just want you to know one thing. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for all of this. You deserved better than to have this secret kept from you, and you deserved a mother who was brave enough to keep you. I failed you, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for that failure if you'll give me the chance." She walked to the door, pausing to look back one last time at the daughter she'd lost and was now desperately trying to reclaim. Then she was gone, and Marcus was left alone with Lily in the wreckage of their shattered reality. "Dad?" Lily's voice was small, uncertain, testing whether that word still applied, whether their relationship could survive this revelation. "Yeah, baby girl," Marcus replied, his heart in his throat. "You're still my dad, right? Even if the biology is different." Marcus pulled her into his arms, holding her tight as they both cried. "Always," he whispered fiercely. "Always and forever. Nothing will ever change that. You hear me? Nothing." They sat there together as the afternoon light faded into evening, two people trying to figure out how to rebuild a life that had been built on lies, but sustained by genuine love. And somewhere out there, Victoria Chen drove through the city streets with tears on her face, hoping that the daughter she'd abandoned would someday find it in her heart to forgive. The truth had been spoken. Now came the harder part, learning to live with it. You know, these moments when secrets are revealed and foundations crumble, they test us in ways we never imagined. If you've ever had your world turned upside down by an unexpected truth, if you've ever struggled with questions of identity and belonging, then you know this pain is real. Subscribe to join our community where we explore these profound human experiences together. Hit that like button if this story resonates with your own journey. And please, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever discovered a family secret that changed everything? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. We're all navigating this complicated thing called life, and together, we're stronger. 3 weeks passed like a strange dream, one of those surreal experiences where time moves both impossibly slow and frighteningly fast. Marcus watched his daughter navigate this new reality with a mixture of pride and heartbreak. Lily had always been resilient, stronger than any 12-year-old should have to be, but this was testing her in ways that terrified him. She'd opened Victoria's gift that first night, spending hours alone in her room poring over the photographs, tracing the features she shared with the stranger who claimed to be her mother. Marcus had stood outside her door, listening to her cry, wanting desperately to comfort her but knowing she needed space to process this on her own terms. The next day, Lily had asked questions. So many questions. About Victoria, about Sarah, about the adoption, about why and how and when. Marcus answered every single one as honestly as he could, even when the truth made him look naive or foolish. She deserved honesty. God knows she'd been denied it for far too long. And then, on a Tuesday afternoon when Marcus picked her up from school, Lily had said the words that both relieved and terrified him. "I want to see her again. Victoria. I want to talk to her." Which was how they ended up here, 3 weeks after that devastating revelation. Sitting in a quiet cafe downtown, the three of them together for only the second time. Victoria had chosen the location carefully, a cozy place with comfortable booths and soft lighting, somewhere that felt safe and neutral. She'd been waiting when they arrived, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she clearly hadn't touched, her eyes lighting up with a mixture of hope and fear when Lily walked through the door. "Hi," Lily said simply, sliding into the booth across from Victoria. Marcus sat beside his daughter, a silent presence of support and protection. "Hi," Victoria replied, her voice soft. "Thank you for agreeing to see me. I know this isn't easy." Lily shrugged, a gesture so achingly familiar to Marcus. It was what she did when she was trying to appear braver than she felt. "I have more questions," she said bluntly, "and Dad says you're the only one who can answer them." "Ask me anything," Victoria said immediately. "I promise I'll tell you the truth no matter what." What followed was an hour of raw, honest conversation. Lily asked about the pregnancy, about why Victoria had given her up, about whether she'd ever tried to find her before. Victoria answered every question with painful honesty, not shying away from her own failures and mistakes. She told Lily about being 20 years old and overwhelmed, about her family's pressure and expectations, about the regret that had haunted her every day since. "Did you ever think about me?" Lily asked, her voice small. "Like on my birthday or Christmas or just random days?" Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "Every single day," she said. "Every morning when I woke up, every night before I went to sleep. I wondered what you looked like, what you sounded like, if you were happy. I imagined 1,000 different versions of you, but none of them compared to the reality of who you actually are." "What am I like?" Lily asked, and Marcus heard the vulnerability beneath the question, the desperate need to be seen, to be known, to understand who she was in relation to this woman who had given her life. Victoria smiled through her tears. "You're brilliant. Your dad tells me you're at the top of your class in math and science. You play basketball, point guard, right? You're fiercely loyal to your friends. You have your dad's sense of humor and my stubbornness. You're brave even when you're scared. And you're kind, which is the most important thing anyone can be." "How do you know all that?" Lily asked suspiciously. "Because I've been learning everything I can about you," Victoria admitted. "I've talked to your dad, looked at your school records, with his permission, watched you play basketball from the stands where you wouldn't see me. I know it sounds creepy, and maybe it is, but I needed to know you even from a distance." Lily processed this, her face unreadable. Then she asked the question Marcus had been dreading. "What do you want from me? Like, long term? What's your plan here?" Victoria took a deep breath. "Honestly, I want to be your mother. I want to be part of your life in whatever capacity you're comfortable with. I know I can't replace the years we lost, and I know your dad is the one who's actually raised you, but I hope that maybe someday you'll let me be there too. For school events, for holidays, for the everyday moments that make up a life. I don't want to take anything away from what you have with your dad. I just want to add to it, if you'll let me." "And if I don't?" Lily challenged. "What if I say I don't want you in my life at all?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Marcus held his breath, watching Victoria's face carefully. This was the moment of truth. Would she respect Lily's autonomy, or would she push her legal rights? "Then I'll step back," Victoria said quietly, and Marcus heard the pain in those words. "It would break my heart, but I would respect your choice. You've already been through enough because of my decisions. I won't force you into a relationship you don't want. But I hope, I really, really hope, that you'll give me a chance." Lily nodded slowly, and Marcus saw something shift in her expression. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of understanding. "Okay," she said. "I need to think about what I want. But maybe we could do this again, like meet for coffee or whatever and just talk? Any time, Victoria said immediately. Whenever you're ready, I'll be there. They left the cafe an hour later, and Marcus noticed something different about Lily's posture. She stood a little taller, walked a little steadier. The weight of not knowing had been replaced by the weight of truth, and somehow truth was easier to carry. Over the following weeks, a tentative routine emerged. Lily and Victoria met every Saturday afternoon, sometimes with Marcus present, sometimes alone. They talked about everything and nothing. Victoria's work, Lily's school, favorite movies, terrible jokes. Slowly, carefully, they began building something that resembled a relationship. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks and arguments and moments when the pain of the past threatened to overwhelm the possibility of the future. Lily struggled with anger, at Victoria for leaving, at Sarah for lying, at Marcus for not somehow knowing the truth. She saw a therapist who helped her process the complex emotions surrounding her identity and family. But there were beautiful moments too. The first time Lily laughed at one of Victoria's stories, the afternoon Victoria showed up to Lily's basketball game wearing a homemade sign with Lily's number on it. The evening when Lily casually referred to Victoria by her first name instead of that woman or her. Small victories that felt monumental in their significance. Marcus watched it all unfold with a mixture of emotions he couldn't fully name. Relief that Lily was handling it better than he'd feared. Jealousy when he saw the easy way Victoria could provide things he couldn't. Expensive birthday gifts, trips to museums and shows, connections that could open doors for Lily's future. Fear that he might lose his daughter to this woman who had so much more to offer. And, buried beneath all of that, a lingering love for the woman Victoria had been, and a complicated respect for the woman she'd become. 6 months after that first devastating morning, the three of them sat together at Lily's school for her 8th grade graduation ceremony. Marcus on one side, Victoria on the other, with Lily between them in her cap and gown. When they called her name and she walked across the stage, both Marcus and Victoria stood and cheered, and Lily's face broke into a brilliant smile that contained multitudes, pride, joy, and the hard-won peace of someone who had faced terrible truths and survived. After the ceremony, as they stood together taking photos, Lily looked up at Victoria and said, "Would it be okay if I called you Mom? Not instead of calling Dad Dad, but just also." Victoria's face transformed, tears streaming down her cheeks as she nodded, unable to speak. Marcus felt his own eyes burn, but he smiled and pulled both of them into a hug. This wasn't the family he'd imagined. It wasn't the life he'd planned. But it was real, and it was theirs, and it was built on a foundation of truth instead of lies. "We're going to figure this out," he said softly, speaking to both of them. "All of us together. It won't always be easy, but we'll figure it out." And as they stood there together, a single father who had loved beyond biology, a powerful CEO who had found the courage to reclaim what she'd lost, and a resilient young girl who had discovered she was big enough to hold space for them both, Marcus realized something profound. Family wasn't about blood or biology or the circumstances of birth. Family was about showing up even when it was hard, about choosing love over convenience, about having the courage to tell the truth and the grace to forgive. That Saturday morning when Marcus had woken up to find Victoria Chen in his kitchen, wearing his shirt and carrying the weight of 13 years of secrets, he'd thought his world was ending. But maybe, just maybe, it had actually been the beginning of something new, something messy and complicated and imperfect, but also something real and honest and full of possibility. The truth had set them free. Now they were learning to live in that freedom, together. This was their story, a story of loss and redemption, of secrets and truth, of broken hearts learning to beat again. And like all the best stories, it didn't end with perfect resolution. It ended with hope, with possibility, with the understanding that even when everything falls apart, love can help us build something new from the pieces. Thank you for staying with us through this emotional journey. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever struggled with questions of family and identity, or if you've ever had to rebuild your life after a shattering revelation, then you're part of this community. Subscribe so you don't miss the other powerful stories we share, stories about the complexity of human connection and the resilience of the human spirit. Leave a comment sharing your own experiences with family secrets or unexpected revelations. Your story matters, and it might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Hit that like button to help us spread these messages of hope and healing. Together, we celebrate the messy, beautiful reality of what it means to be human, to love, and to find our way home, even when home looks nothing like we expected. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, and thank you for sharing this journey with us.